Previously in the book of Proverbs, I spoke of detecting evil by using wisdom. Now I'm moving on to understanding and why that's important, and God honors those who honor Him. So starting from the introduction of chapter 3. This chapter is one of the most excellent in all this book, both for argument to persuade us to be religious or to be godly, and for directions therein. We must be constant to our duty, because that is the way to be happy. We must live a life of dependence upon God, because that is the way to be safe. We must keep up the fear of God, because that is the way to be healthful. We must serve God with our estates, our positions, because that is the way to be rich in heavenly terms, not on earthly terms. We must hear afflictions well, because that is the way to get good by them. We must take pains to obtain wisdom, because that is the way to gain her and to gain by her. We must always govern ourselves by the rules of wisdom, of right reason and godliness, because that is the way to be always easy. We must do all the good we can and no hurt to our neighbors, because according as men are just or unjust, charitable or uncharitable, humble or haughty, accordingly they shall receive of God. From all this it appears what a tendency religion has to make men both blessed and blessings. So to get officially started from verse 1 through verse 6. My son, forget not my law, but let your heart keep my commandments. For the length of days and long life and peace shall they add to you. Let not mercy and truth forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them out upon the table of your heart. So shall you find favor and good understanding, or good repute in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not to your own understanding. Now, keep in mind, when it says this, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't think. It means that you should take the counsel of someone who knows better than you. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. So it's basically saying, remember God, do not forget about Him. And Moses stressed this greatly in the Old Testament. We are here taught to live a life of communion with God, and without controversy. Great is this mystery of godliness, and of great consequence to us, and as is here shown, will be of unspeakable advantage. We must, number 1, fix God's law upon ourselves, and His commandments, as our rule, by which we will in everything be ruled, and to which we will yield obedience. Number 2, we must acquaint ourselves with them, for we cannot be said to forget that which we never knew. Number 3, we must remember them, so that they may be ready to us whenever we have occasion to use them. Number 4, our wills and affections must be subject to them, and must in everything conform to them. Not only our heads, but our hearts must keep God's commandments in them, as in the ark of the testimony. Both the tablets of the law must be deposited. So it must encourage us to submit ourselves to all the restraints and injunctions of the divine law. We are assured that it is the certain way to long life and prosperity. And that's on some cases, because Ecclesiastes, mentions this very well. And I want you guys to keep in mind that Proverbs, the book of Proverbs and the book of Ecclesiastes are both in the balance. So don't see Proverbs as just one thing contradicting Ecclesiastes, because Proverbs does mention how you can have a good life, a good, peaceful, happy life. But as we know that doesn't always happen, because there is suffering and all that. Ecclesiastes comes into that and balances it out. Ecclesiastes mentions that sometimes you won't have a good life, and in case if you don't, this is what to expect. So keep in mind that Proverbs isn't saying that for certain if you do this stuff you will have a good life. It's not for certain, it's just for some. So it is the way to be long lived. God's commandments shall add to us length of days, to a good useful life on earth. They shall add an eternal life in heaven, length of days forever and ever. God shall be our life and length of our days, and that it will be indeed long life, with an addition. But because length of days may be possibly become a burden and trouble, it is promised, and that it shall prove the way to be easy too, so that even the days of old age shall not be evil days, but days in which you shall have pleasure. Peace shall be continually adding to you. As grace increases, peace shall increase, and of the increase of Christ's government and peace, in the heart as well as in the world, there shall be no end. Great and growing peace have those that love the law. We must have a continual regard to God's promises, which go along with His precepts, and are to be received and retained with them. Let not mercy and truth forsake you. God's mercy in promising, and His truth in performing. Do not forfeit these, but live up to them, and preserve your interest in them, Do not forget these, but live upon them, and take the comfort of them. Bind them around your neck, as the most graceful ornament. It is the greatest honor we are capable of in this world, to have an interest in the mercy and truth of God. Write to them upon the tables of your heart, as dear to you, your portion and most delightful entertainment. Take a pleasure in applying them and thinking them over. Or it may be meant of the mercy and truth which are our duty, piety, and sincerity, charity towards men, fidelity towards God. Let these be fixed and commanding principles in you. To encourage us to do this, we are assured that this is the way to recommend ourselves both to our Creator and fellow creatures. So shall you find favor and good understanding. A good man seeks the favor of God in the first place, is ambitious of the honor of being accepted of the Lord, and he shall find that favor. And with it, a good understanding. God will make the best of him, and put a favorable construction upon what he says and does. He shall be owned as one of wisdom's children, and shall have praise with God, as one having the good understanding which is ascribed to all those that do his commandments, not just hear, but do. He wishes to have favor with men also, as Christ had in Luke, to be accepted of the multitude of his brethren, and that he shall have they shall understand him correctly, and in his dealings with them he shall appear to be prudent, shall act intelligently and with discretion. He shall have good success, so some translate it, the common effect of good understanding. We must have a continual regard to God's providence, must own and depend upon it in all our affairs, both by faith and prayer. Number 1, by faith, we must repose an entire confidence in the wisdom, power, and goodness of God, assuring ourselves of the extent of his providence to all the creatures in all their actions. We must therefore trust in the Lord with all our hearts. We must believe that he is able to do what he will, wise to do what is best, and good according to his promise, to do what is best for us, if we love him and serve him. We must, with an entire submission and satisfaction, depend upon him to perform all things for us, and not lean to our own understanding, as if we could, by any forecast of our own, without God, help ourselves and bring our affairs to a good issue. Those who know themselves cannot but find their own understanding to be a broken reed, which, if they lean to, will certainly fail them. In all our conduct, we must be definite of our own judgment, and confident of God's wisdom, power, and goodness, and therefore must follow providence and not force it. That often proves best which was least our own doing. Number 2, by prayer. In all your ways acknowledge God. We must not only in our judgment believe that there is an overruling hand of God ordering and disposing of us and all our affairs, but we must solemnly own it and address ourselves to him accordingly. We must ask his permission and not design anything but what we are sure is lawful. We must ask his advice and beg direction from him, not only when the case is difficult, when we know not what to do, no thanks to us that we have our eyes up to him, but in every case, be it ever so plain, we must ask success of him, as those who know the race is not to the swift. We must refer ourselves to him as one from whom our judgment proceeds, and patiently, and with a holy indifferency, wait his award. In all our ways that prove direct and fair and pleasant, in which we gain our point to satisfaction, we must acknowledge God with thankfulness. In all our ways that prove cross and uncomfortable, and that are hedged up with thorns, we must acknowledge God with submission. Our eye must be ever towards God. To him we must, in everything, make our requests known, as Jephthah uttered all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. For our encouragement to do this, it is promised, he shall direct your paths, so shall your way shall be safe and good, and the issue happy at last. Note, those that put themselves under a divine guidance shall always have the benefit of it. God will give them that wisdom which is profitable to direct, so that they shall not turn aside into the bypaths of sin, and then will himself so wisely order the event that it shall be to their mind, or which is equivalent, for their good. Those that faithfully follow the pillar of cloud and fire shall find that though it may lead them around, it leads them the right way and will bring them to Canaan at last, or Jerusalem, or the promised land, I should say. So that's the explanation of to always remember God. Remember him, pray to him, have faith in him, do not lean on your understanding, but count on him to do everything for you. Now moving on to God being the Father and disciplining his sons, though it may not be joyous in the moment, and everything we have, we must glorify him. That's going to be in the next video, God willing.